Excellent. So welcome to the very first statewide OCM conference, Enabling State Change 2024. My name is Eli Reese, and I'm an organizational change manager with the University of Washington's Central IT office. And I'm really excited. Our next speaker, Emma Margraf, is, when I heard her topic, the accidental change manager, I'm like, oh, she's been following my career. So Emma, please. Actually, before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. You'll notice that there is a Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Please put your questions in the Q&A. We'll be utilizing chat off and on throughout, and if you throw questions in the chat, there's always a chance we might miss your question as it kind of gets mixed in with the other bits, and we don't want to miss anything. So please use that Q&A feature for any questions, and we'll try to answer them as we go through the presentation. If for whatever reason, it doesn't work out, we'll try and address it toward the end. So thank you. Emma, please, welcome.
Sorry about that, you guys. So here we are, the accidental change manager. My name is Emma Margraf. I'm here with my cat, Yara, who likes to camp out on me and sometimes leap away when I'm up here in this quiet space. So the accidental change manager is a funny thing because this is a bit of a rant that started in Robin Rosine's change management work group with her change managers at the Department of Veterans Affairs. And then it's something I just continue to think about and continue to explore. So I got on a little bit more of a rant, and I got in a little bit more of a soapbox. And my caveat here is that I am very experienced in change management, and I am going to talk a lot about things that that aren't true in my current role. I work in One Washington. I run a team of change managers, and it's a great job and it's a great role. And you're going to find out a little bit more about where the irony is as I move along. I have 25 years of experience in government, nonprofit, and community leadership. I didn't grow up in government. I started out in politics, and I worked for nonprofits, and I ran a few nonprofits, and then I decided to look for some safety and security in work and joined DSHS, where I was a communications program manager for almost 7 years. Before I left to join OFM, and now I'm in my current role. I'm also somebody who works a lot in community groups still. I am on the board of an organization called Treehouse, which works with foster kids and is doing a huge amount of change management work themselves. So that's really fun to do as well. So we're going to start off with a quick poll. And I would love to have all of your engagement here. If you had a change management training, if you went to a change management training, how much did you know when you first walked in those doors? How much did you, how much were you aware of? I love watching the poll numbers go up and down because I have no idea what the answer to this question is going to be. But it's moving further and further towards what I expected. Let's see. How long do we keep this poll open, you guys? Looks like most people have answered. It looks like most people have answered. So we'll share the results, and 69% of all of you are saying you had some idea. And 26% said you had no idea what this crazy stuff was about at all. and only 7 of you said you were already a pro. And that's kind of exactly what I thought was going to happen. We're going to talk a little bit more about this. So I'll just click stop share. Oh, you're going to do that for me. Thanks so much. There's a just wonderful team behind this conference that I just love. So when I first went to, um, I first went to the Prosci training in 2017, and when I walked in, back in those days, Prosci trainings were held in hotel conference rooms, and I have to say, over the course of 3 days, I think I ate my weight in bacon. It doesn't quite roll that way anymore, unfortunately. But I just kept eating this bacon as folks were talking to me about something I had never ever heard of. I had no idea what that this was a occupation, that this was a certification. I had no idea that this was a methodology. And so I just listened to him talk. And when he got to the point where he said, um, there are preferred senders in our world. And those are the people that need to send messages of change. A light bulb clicked in my head, and I realized I was already a change manager. I realized I was already doing that. I was already picking preferred senders, like finding ways to send messages through supervisors so that people would listen and get the information they needed. That's the perspective I took as a communications program manager. I instituted something called supervisor talking points before I went to change management training. And they were hugely successful because the supervisors across the division were saying, hey, I know how to communicate the right messages now. I have the information I need to send. So this was a big light bulb in my head. And I have to say about this presentation, there are going to be some quirky, odd photos along the way, and some of them aren't going to have anything to do with what I'm talking about. It's just because I like some diversity, and I figure I might throw in some fun photos along the way. So just a heads up about that. But this one is really because it's about a reset. It's about me saying, oh, right. Okay. I had no idea, but this is something that's great to know about myself and my work. So what does this all mean, right? So I went back to work and I started applying change management methodology in a more formal way. And I started understanding what this was all about. And I started putting things into practice. And I liked it, I liked it. And I was looking around and I'm thinking, well, I'm not the only one. This isn't just me. Like, and at the time it was fairly rare. I was sent to pro se training by somebody, by a supervisor at DSHS who was really forward thinking about this, um, and that made me really lucky. But it also gave me a really great perspective on the world of change management. So this is something I'd like to open the chat for. We are most of us change managers. A lot of us are change managers, I would imagine. If you aren't specifically, if you don't specifically have that title, you probably are a change manager anyway. I'd like you to throw in the chat what the natural skills of change managers are. What is it that change managers have in their toolbox, or just are parts of their personality? All right, communication, critical thinking, outgoing, patience, flexibility, transparency, openness. You guys are so good. Linking cross-functional, empathy, strategy, approachable, friendly, facilitation, ability, discernment. Aha, yes, that comes from one of my people, I can tell. Persuasiveness, yes, listening. You guys are so smart. Um, these are the skills. I see planning coming up quite a lot. And influence is a really good one. We should include a part as part of this conversation, the different kinds of influence people have. Crazy hardworking. Yeah, I'll get back to that one too. Absolutely. Compassion. Oh my goodness. Okay. Yeah, and patience comes up quite a lot. Um, which is something that um, that we all need, but that's going to come back again too. So, like I said, um, uh, strange pictures that I just throw in there for fun. Most people on my team are very intimately aware, acquainted with my dogs, Boris and Olive, who are in here selling lemonade, just for fun. Um, Next to the fun fact I found about the number of change managers in this country. According to a particular firm that did a study, the citing is down there at the bottom. They say that there are 3,734 change managers in our country, professional change managers in our country. I would imagine that number is higher. But when I look at it, even if it is higher, I think that's nowhere near enough, not even close. Um, and when I came into change management, obviously, Eli said, I was tracking their career, but I completely fell into it. Like there was nobody telling me what it was. And when I worked in the nonprofit world, I certainly was doing change management all the time. But it wasn't something that we recognized as a need or a discipline. So this gets me thinking about some possibilities. So these numbers go up and down. These This is from a study that Forbes was citing, and the Prosci numbers are similar to this. And I don't necessarily want to get us hung up on numbers, but um, it is important to know that they are consistent across the board. 70% of change management initiatives fail. 73% of employees are affected by change say they're suffering from moderate to high stress levels. That's an important number. Those are important numbers, and it almost doesn't matter what specifically they are, because given the consistency of them across the board, it's something that we need to keep talking about. We are change managers, and um, we do have control over this. We do have influence. In particular, we have social capital and social influence over all the thousands of people who are accidental change managers like some of us. So again, this is Boris, just for fun. Feel free to give him love in the chat if you like. Although I have closed the chat, which I don't think I was supposed to do. Um, so here's um, my big stand that I'm taking today is that, oh, thank you so much. So change management should not be an initiative, right? It should not be a project. It should not be like anything temporary. I know that I often try to be really transparent with folks that I am a manager of 11 professional change managers, and I still do not adopt the changes that I need to adopt. I am that person who, when the thing comes up on my computer and says your computer needs to restart um, because it is update, there are updates, I keep snoozing it until it forces me to. There are times um, when when I need to onboard somebody or a change needs to be made, and I wake up the day that that's happening, and I realize I have not planned for it. I realize I have not done what I needed to do, and that was because of time. I just didn't have the time. And while I know that I am currently on a project that is incredibly time bound and has a lot of pressure on it, I know that I'm not the only one. I am certain that there are, hundreds of you who are feeling the same way, who are change managers and, maybe don't even have the time to incorporate the day-to-day changes that you need to make. Like, so if the schedule is changing, have we made enough time to talk about that? If the process is changing, have we made enough time to have a conversation about it? If the parking lot is changing, have we made enough time to talk about that? These are things on the day to day that we don't have enough bandwidth to discuss. And if we did, things would be a lot different. I do want to open the chat for a minute and just give people an opportunity to say, um, I, I'm with you. These are the things I don't have time to do, or these are the things I wish I had more time to do. When it comes to making change a part of your world. So is the chat open? Let me see. Yeah, changing my passwords. Absolutely. I wish I had time to think. I went to a management training one time where the trainer said that the ultimate goal of being a manager should be to be able to put your feet up and stare out the window and think about the future. That's exactly it, Cheryl. Reflecting is so important, but who has the time? Which is, part of why I'm grateful for those of you who put together this conference. Um, and I have encouraged my team to participate as much as they can. Um, and yeah, some bank emails. Sometimes I get so busy that I struggle to keep my tasks in the same space. Yeah, I start doing something and then never get back to that task. You have so many great ideas. So many of us are creative people and we have ideas all the time about how to improve things. And you just, I don't know, write those things on sticky notes and like hope you'll get to it. My to-read list is out of control. Mine too. Mine too. And achieving career goals without preparation and planning. Yeah, that's an absolute one. You need that's a thing as a supervisor to make time for that is really like really impactful. I have a pile of sticky notes. Yeah, you and I are the same. Piles of sticky notes. There's also piles of sticky notes in my head, just trying to get sorted out. Okay, thank you for participating. I really like to hear what everybody has to say, and I know that yeah, there's piles of books. There's so many books of great books, and when I went on and this is a little bit of a side note, but I went on an initiative recently to read more fiction because for years I've been reading so much nonfiction. There's so many good things out in the world to read about what we do that I've done so much of that I have gone directly in the other direction and tried really hard to read some fiction, and it's a great way to kind of refocus and think about the world a little bit differently. Okay, so as to not get behind, I will keep going. Sorry, y'all. live in teams every day, all day long. So no muscle memory for Zoom. So we're going to do another quick poll. Would you consider change normalized in your work culture? They're going to put up that poll for you. And there's a couple of different answers. And, it's anonymous. So feel free to be totally upfront. I do love watching. I know I said that before. I do love watching the answers come in. And I recognize here that normalized is a relative term. So you choose the thing that makes the most sense to you. And it looks like sometimes sort of is the answer that's pulling up front as the far and away winner. I respect all of you who have answered definitely, because that is I'm very impressed. Most of us fall into this sometimes sort of category. And not at all. And I'd prefer not to say that's completely understandable. We know that that's we know. Um, and I'm going to talk more about that, but sometimes sort of things are normalized. That's where most of us are. Um, I'm going to tie these two things together. But first, we're going to talk about culture change. So I started reading a little bit about this because I was thinking about the idea of accidental change managers and also the problem in change management and in how much work we have to do and what culture change actually means. So I started reading about these folks that were trying new things. They did a study, and then they launched some new ideas, and basically developed this framework, which is the 4 parts of culture cycle: ideas, institutions, interactions, and individuals. They believe that if you firmly identify the 4 parts of the culture cycle in these boxes and understand how they interact, that helps you get to where you need in culture change. And so they're testing this out. They're continuing to test this out on things like Nextdoor. For those of you who don't know what Nextdoor is, it's a platform that neighbors use kind of as a social media tool to exchange information and talk about things that are going on in the neighborhood. And a lot of folks were complaining, including me. I left Nextdoor after a certain amount of time because I couldn't handle it. There was so much negativity, and there was one post one time that um, that talked about somebody walking through our neighborhood in a hoodie, and the man described following that person in a hoodie until they left the neighborhood, and I was horrified. Why would you do that? And it turned into a terrible conversation in the comments, and I kind of backed away from Nextdoor and deleted it from my phone. So that's what caught my attention about this, because they were working with them, and they're trying out some things where they're putting some questionnaires at the beginning before you put up a post to kind of consider various aspects of your post and ask yourself, do some self-reflection about whether this post is going to be useful to the community. And I don't think that any of us are going to say that racism is going to be solved, but what can be solved are small pieces of the pie. So if some people some individuals are interacting with this institution and getting new ideas, that culture change starts to hit. And if we can do this in a number of different ways, it might help shift the culture in the way that we need it to be shifted. And today I'm talking about shifting it in a direction so that change and change management is incorporated into all of our lives. But this applies to a lot of things. That's why I found this interesting. And I want to stop here for a second to say that Eli noted that you are welcome to put questions in the Q&A. And I would love to see any questions any of you all have. Even if I don't have a specific answer, I love the conversation. So please put questions in there if you have them. And we'll either talk about them now or at the end. So what I'm building towards here is a culture of change. Again, this picture doesn't have much to do with anything, but it's from a baseball game in Alabama I went to where the team was called the Biscuits, and these two biscuits, people dressed as biscuits, are racing around the field trying to get to home plate, which I found really entertaining. So I decided to put it up here because it's not so different from the chaos that sometimes happens in our lives and in our work. But back to the culture of change. So bringing in those natural change managers. We talked about the traits that natural change managers have that we recognize in all kinds of people, right? We recognize them in admin folks. We recognize them in leadership. We recognize them in IT and business. Bringing those folks in, not necessarily to play a key role in change management, but to play the role of advocate. So weaving them into the fabric of our work is really what I'm talking about. So this is a Psychology Today article from a Psychology Today article. Sometimes I kind of tool around on the internet. Like I say, I read a lot of nonfiction and a lot of essays and a lot of stuff like this. And this article talks about the 10 most common sources of motivation. These are 5 of them. And the thing that stands out to me about these 5 is that they're very relevant. They're very relevant to change and change management. Like curiosity is desire, right? Autonomy is knowledge and ability. Other people and external incentives. That's what's in it for me. Those are directly related to the frameworks that most of us use all the time. And if we touch on these and we think about our natural change managers, that's where we can start patching together our big tents. That's where we can start saying, okay, we're all in this together. We're all doing this at the same time. We're all moving in the direction where we know that people need to have this in their lives so that they can achieve their goals, so that they can move forward, so that we can improve things, so that we can fix things that are broken, so that we can do all of the things that we need to do. And like I said at the beginning, this is a bit of a soapbox. And I am sitting in a chair right now where I don't have much time at all. But it does give me a very interesting perch to think about this, to think about what I would do if I had all the time in the world, how I would move things in different directions, how I would talk to folks about what change management can do for their particular corner of the world and how it can improve them. So patching together our big tent, like it doesn't necessarily need to mean that everybody is together all in the same place, but we all have these change management umbrellas just kind of holding us in the place, in a place we need to be, protecting us from the things that happen when you don't have some of our methodologies. If we do that, this is a big stand, right? We have no more accidents. We build what we know about change into our daily lives. We elevate change. We put it in leadership. We bring natural change managers into the fold. We talk about the way things are changing every day, all the time. We train people, and we use what we know about change management to make decisions. And I honestly, I think this is an achievable goal, despite the fact that there is a typo on this slide. It's still an achievable goal, but it kind of goes to my point. This is my soapbox. This is my stand. This is my thinking. And I really credit Robin with forcing me to kind of move into these thoughts and think about what things could be. I believe in the big time. I believe in bringing everybody in. I believe in looking at those natural change managers and identifying them and welcoming them and talking to them about what they can do. There's lots of ways we can do this. There's lots of tools we can use, and we all know what those are. So my hope right now is that there are some questions or comments from some of you, ideas or thoughts that you want to throw out there. Eli's going to monitor those for me, because I've made it clear to him that I'm incapable of monitoring them on my own.
I'll get
Yes.
him. So we have one question in the chat. What's your best advice for identifying those natural change managers? Because Cheryl sees them at all levels.
They are at all levels. They're everywhere. And so, I think you identify, I think you identify them. I think you know them when you see them. I think when people, make themselves present, it's really, it's really clear. But another is, some folks are not folks who make themselves immediately present right off the bat. And I think as change managers, we're often people who talk to folks, who have conversations, who look into who people, like, talk to people and figure out who they are. I used to, when I worked at DSHS, I used to go and sit in one of the field offices once a week and just talk to people. And so, some of those folks, they were frontline workers, and so, some of them would come and tell me that their kids were graduating from college, or that they were getting married, or that they were going on vacations. And in those conversations, their tendency towards change, or change readiness, or weariness, or lack of resilience always makes itself known just in those casual conversations. So that's my other piece of advice. I do see Gina's question, Eli. What if somebody thinks, I could do that work? What skills do they need to acquire before they accidentally fall into this role, or have a sort of purposeful accident, I guess you would say? There, I've seen a lot of people. I've seen a lot of people take on change management tasks as extra work, and I'm not a huge fan of trying to give people extra work so that they can do professional development. But there's a lot of things that you can do if you talk to your supervisor about moving forward in a change management career, I think all of us can talk to supervisors about offering those options. I think all of us can talk to supervisors and say, hey, have you thought about encouraging your folks to take online lean training, or to go to to enroll, it's more of an investment, but to go enroll in a greenbelt program. Um, have you have you talked to your people about whether they're interested in this kind of work? They can take some classes, introductory classes online. Um, as we all know, frontline supervisors are the great resource of all time. And if we bring them in, it takes us a long way towards moving forward. Um, they can offer those things. They can talk to folks. They can encourage them.
Yeah, one thing I've seen working with our COP, our change management COP, is that some of the state organizations have created mentorship programs. So almost, I apologize, I'm going to completely misspeak this, but basically a job swap kind of a thing.
Mhm.
They go in and work with someone in that position and shadow them and learn from them. So almost like an apprenticeship on change management. And I know Cheryl is really huge on that one. The other thing, I'm sorry.
That's a really great, yeah, that's a really great program.
And yes, I did say that you've been following my career. For me, I was working as a business analyst and trainer in healthcare, and I didn't know what I was doing differently, but it was working, and it definitely differentiated itself. And then I became a communications manager, and that's when I discovered change management even existed. And
Mhm.
and so my deep dive, because I'm a reader, I started reading all the things. And then I found a program through the University of Washington's Continuum College that was kind of uh, what do you call it? Approach agnostic, really. It talked about a lot of the different theorists and gave a lot of perspective that way. So I would highly recommend if you can find something like that at your local colleges to dive deeper into, is this something for me?
Yeah, yeah. Is this something? Yeah, so many of us just kind of fell into it, and I wonder if I wonder how many of you, when you go out into the world and people see what you do you say you're a change management practitioner?
Me? Oh yeah. And then I have to
Yeah.
explain to them what it is.
Right. Um, because I did a project at the Division of Child Support called "How We Talk About Our Work," because so many of the child support workers would go out and say that they work for DSHS, or they would just say they work for the state. And I would say, tell people you're a child support worker. Tell people you care about it. Tell people that it's important to you, and tell them why. Those conversations that we have, all of these resources are great, but they are the second step, right? So the first step um, is I manage a team of change managers, and just like you were saying, Eli, what the heck is that? Um, and uh, um, and then you talk about the fact that that there are globally recognized certification programs, that there are master's programs, that people study this, because a lot of, like I said, some with 3,700 or something official change managers in this country. There's not enough of us. There's not, we don't, we need an army of our own. And so if we like recognize that in folks in our personal lives and in our professional lives, and start with that conversation, that is the beginning. Because, like, one thing I noticed in your comments, Eli, is that you're saying you started to hear about it, so you started to do research, right? um, but we could also meet you where you are if we have those conversations. You know what I mean?
Oh, totally. And I'm a big advocate and in my organization of educating people on what change management is. So
Mm-hmm.
I do that for our executive and leaders at all levels. Like I said, I work for the University of Washington. I did a presentation for our ecological restoration symposium. So I was hanging out with a bunch of environmental scientists, but talking about change management and how they could, you know, reconsider the work that they're doing. And I got a lot of really great, I never thought about that before, kind of feedback. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of spreading the word and evangelizing, so to speak. Um, I
Yeah.
did, I did have a question though. So when you are like, let's say you're not a titled change management manager, but you realize that you are an accidental change person, and you have got this realization, you've started kind of delving in you want to try utilizing some of this structure in your work. How do you communicate that to the people around you to get on board? Because I know when I was at that point in my journey, I really struggled getting people to understand.
Yeah. Yeah. And I noticed somebody in the chat talk about stigma and fear, which I think is related to your question, because there's a lot of stigma and fear around change, around having to do things differently. And so if you get back to the what's in it for me, um, and you think about what you think about the perspective of the folks that you're talking to, um, you know, I think it's possible. I think it's really possible to address that fear head on, and that stigma head on, and say, um, you know, change management doesn't have to be something that is intrusive or scary, or and it doesn't even have to be a burden. What it can be is something that will make your life, your structure, your project, your staff set up for success. And Prosci has great research that can be used. And I don't want to be a Prosci evangelist necessarily, but they do have good research that you can use to talk to people about how this is tied directly to whether things succeed. I have a friend who was a general counsel to a global corporation that launched an effort, a change management effort that they spent $100 million on, and they didn't listen to the one change manager that they hired, and they failed. And they just scrapped the project, and it was $100 million wasted.
$100 million and only one change manager.
$100 million, one change manager.
Okay. Okay. I have feeling.
I I know. It's so and she was the one, in staff meetings saying that, this person doesn't like can't do this by themselves. And they can't do this by themselves. And to I think Gina's point in the chat, they had some project managers, but they only had one change manager. So they only had one person showing folks what was in it for them to make this change. They only had one person who was driving towards the awareness and desire and need for the change. They had only had one person doing all of those things, and that led to a waste of $100 million.
Yeah.
Feel free to share that story. It's the experience of a good friend of mine. I think we see that all the time. So we talk to folks about. I am an advocate of talking to leadership and saying, hey, send your executive assistants to change management training, because you know what happens then.
Mhm.
then they're able, it's not what leadership may always think of as a traditional role for taking a change management training. But if they have it, then they can set their boss up for success. They can see those things coming that they need to prepare for. They can talk to their boss about why they may need to go to a particular meeting or a particular luncheon or whatever it is.
Mhm.
So again, soapbox,
Yeah.
soapbox.
I know for a fact that my big boss, who is the vice president of technology for the entire university, Andreas Bowman, he's
Mhm.
he's Prosci certified. So that's kind of, where we have
That's really
I've
good.
had an in.
That's really good. Do you go back to the pro site stuff?
I
No, yeah.
I
I-
use Prosci a lot when I'm communicating to
Yeah.
people who aren't
Yeah.
change.
I hear from a lot of folks that I hear from a lot of folks. I'm sorry.
Oh, I wasn't talking.
I my connection became unstable for a
Oh,
second,
okay.
but I think I'm back.
Okay, good.
I hear from a lot of folks that that leadership goes to change management training. They get access to like say like the ProSite dashboard for leaders or some equivalent, and then they never visit it again, right? So if we have the big tent, if we have everybody under those umbrellas, then we build in a little bit of time to talk about change throughout all of our conversations, um, and um, and and then we have more success, and then all of that stuff that the leaders learned is not forgotten. Because if we're realistic about what leadership means, it means that like leaders need support to help them, stay in that role. Like we are all, most of us are people who like nudge our leaders and say, hey, remember this, remember this, remember that. Um, yeah, Brittany's saying I'm just advocating for more change management classes at all levels. It's um, it's exactly what we need to do. We don't have to force everybody to go all in. We can do, just the touch your toes in the water classes. Um, we could do, actually when Washington is going to start doing some, change management classes for folks that are, participating in One Washington. Um, so I'm a little bit, um, walking my, walking my walk here. So
So I'll tell you a secret.
yeah,
I've been low key training my communications colleagues on change management. So
nice.
yeah, I feel a little bit subversive, but in a good way. So
This is what we're doing here in this hour, Eli. We're being subversive. We're starting a revolution. We're doing we're sneaking in from the sides, from all different directions and kind of dropping the information where we need it to drop. Um,
Girl, viva la revolution.
I will say that I am a firm believer in giving people time back. Um, I um, I love this conversation. I don't want to keep people all the way till 2 o'clock if folks want to get coffee or water for the next thing they have to do. But I do want to stay on until 2 o'clock to talk to folks. And hey, Eli, we got a suggestion for the two of us having a podcast.
I'm down. I'm down.
Just it could be the change management revolution podcast. We just like start like start little balls rolling.
Vent session. We can start our own vent sessions that'll turn into bigger boulders rolling down hills. I do want to point something out. You were talking about patching together our big tent, and when I hear that, I think about change management as a community. And I've mentioned this in other sessions. the change management community of practice is amazing. And
Mhm.
like I go basically as therapy, and I feel so just rejuvenated to be in community with people who are like-minded, who are willing to problem solve. Like we bounce ideas off of each other, like challenges that we're having. And I know like Cheryl, if you could go ahead and drop into the chat if anybody here, even if, change manager is not your title, but you see that you are an accidental change manager and you're interested in hanging out with us, having lunch every so often, coming to some of our meetings, we would love for you to join us because there is absolutely power in numbers. And as we can see from the number of people who have come to this conference, there's an interest and we would love to have you join us. So that's my soapbox.
Um,
All right, I can see that
I
she's
was just writing, yeah, sorry, Eli, I was just writing a note to somebody saying that they're just starting to take classes and just saying, that they should feel free to reach out to me. And I'm open to anybody, reaching out. Um, I know this wasn't a particularly a talk that came from a informational standpoint. It's coming from a just press the button to see what I can do standpoint. Let's have this conversation and see what we can do to keep it moving. Um, and I love that so many people are on board with that.
yeah,
And it's fun to talk to you about it, Eli. So maybe that podcast is in our future.
maybe in our free time.
In all our free time, right? So what are you doing in 2027 when One Washington is finished?
Over at the university, we just finished with our Workday implementation. So that is not my project at all.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we have things to talk about on the topic of Workday. That could be a whole podcast in and of itself.
Whole other thing. That's a
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
okay.
Do we close it up from here?
Do you have any last words? Are you feeling good?
No, I mean, I think that I appreciate the opportunity to get on my soapbox and share some goofy pictures and have this conversation. I appreciate all of you. Thank you, Eli, for being my partner in crime on this. And and I do absolutely think that the community of practice is a wonderful opportunity, and I think everybody should go.
Thank you for joining us today, everyone. Have a great afternoon.